Another treat from my summer book reading club, or not really club, it's just summer book reading for me of 2024. This is Bill Clinton's My Life. I'm reading the large print. The book is huge, it's like 3 inches, but it's great because you know my eyesight. Copyright is 1993. Actually, it's 2004, my bad. I'm going to read you various excerpts from throughout what I've read so far in the book. In the prelogue, it says, in the memory of his grandfather who taught me to look up to people that others look down on because we're not so different after all. And in the prologue, he lists these things. He says, I wanted to be a good man, have good friends, make a successful political life, and write a good book. And he says, whether I'm a good man is, of course, for God to judge. He says, I've been graced beyond measure. It has been wonderful. Continuing, and he's talking about life. His continuing promise is grounded in their love, and he's talking about his family, right? And then he goes on to say, he rose to presidency on the shoulders of his personal friends. His life has been a joy. He loved campaigns and loved governing. He always tried to keep things moving in the right direction and to give more people a chance to live their dreams, to lift people's spirits, and to bring them together. And that's why he kept score. And when he talks about keeping score, this reminds me a lot of what I do naturally. He says that he read a book called How to Get Control of Your Time and Life by Alan Lakin. And he says the book main point was the necessity of listing short, medium, and long-term goals, categorizing them in order of their importance, with the A group being the most important, B being the next, and C last. I do this like by instinct. Like I said, I have complete manuals. But anyhow, so chapter 1, some excerpts from chapter 1. His mother is widowed. Her name is Julia Chester, and he was born in a hospital in a town called Hope, which is about only 6,000 people in South Arkansas. It's 33 miles of Texas, the Texas border of Texarkana. His father was William Jefferson Blythe Jr., who was one of 9 children of a poor farmer in Sherman, Texas. His father was known to be handsome, hardworking, and a fun-loving man. His father, when he met his mother, Bill Clinton's mother, was actually dating someone. He met Bill Clinton's mother in the hospital where she worked, and the person that he was dating had some kind of medical emergency. And Bill Clinton's father decided he was going to flirt with his mom, who's a nurse, and he touched her finger and says, "Are you married?" And because she was wearing her boyfriend's ring at the time, she said no, she was single. So, he flirted with her. She flirted back. The next day, he sent the other woman that he brought to the hospital flowers. And his mom, of course, was heartbroken. And then after that, he called his mom for a date. Sounds like a playboy to me. Called his mom for a date, explaining that he always sent flowers when he ended a relationship. But anyhow, so people recognize Bill Clinton. When he was young, they would say, hey, you're Bill Blythe's son. You look just like him. And Bill Clinton, of course, would be so proud. We're always proud of our daddies, right? In 1974, Bill Clinton ran for Congress. And his mom was in a coffee shop that she worked in a coffee shop. Worked in a coffee shop, and there was a regular that came in, and that regular came up to her and said, I was there. I was the first one at the wreck that night. Basically what happened is Bill Clinton's dad died in a car wreck. He drowned when he was 28 years old. And his mom and his dad only been married for like 2 years and 8 months, and only 7 of those months were spent with his mom. His father had another son who was identified as Leon Ritzenthaler, who's a retired owner of a janitorial service. That person wrote Bill Clinton during the 1992 campaign, but he said that he received no reply. Bill Clinton says that he don't remember hearing about the letter, and probably took into consideration all the other bullets that they were dodging then. And it's possible that the staff kept the letter from him, or maybe the letter was just misplaced in the mountains of mail they were receiving. When he did finally get in contact with his half-brother Leon, he got in touch with him later and met his wife Judy during one of their stops in Northern California. And he said that him and Leon Ritzenauer, which is his half-brother, look alike. His birth certificate both have his father's name. And he says that he wished that he met him a long time ago. There were also news about a story that he also had a sister named Sharon Pettyborn, who was born Sharon Lee Blythe in Kansas City in 1941. Bill Clinton was born in August 1946, so she's 5 years older than him. To a woman that his father later divorced. He never had a chance to actually meet her, and he started to get to understand that his father's life was more complicated than the idealized pictures he lived with for nearly half a century. 1994, there was the celebration of the 50th anniversary of D-Day. On Memorial Day of that year, he was thumbing through a copy of the New York Times Daily News, and in the lower left-hand corner of the paper was a photo of Bill. If he felt chills to learn that Bill was none other than the father of the United States. So basically, backing it up a little bit, in 1994, when there was the 50th anniversary of D-Day, there were several newspapers that published a story on his father's war record, and it had a snapshot of him in uniform. Shortly afterward, he received a letter from Umberto Barron of Netcong, New Jersey, who recounted his own experiences during the war and after. He said that he was a young boy in Italy when the Americans arrived and that he loved to go to their camp, where one soldier in particular befriended him, giving him candy and showing him how engines worked and how to repair them. He knew him only as Bill, and that soldier called him Little G.I. Joe. It turned out to be Bill Clinton's dad, right? In 1996, one of his cousins brought him a gift. It was a letter that his aunt received from her congressman, who was at the time Sam Rayburn, after his father died. It was a short form letter that was signed with probably an auto signature. And it was a condolence letter. And Bill Clinton loved that letter and actually posted it in his office, right? He said that his stepfather had just told him he'd served in the war. So there was an airline employee that stopped him when he was boarding the U.S. Air Shuttle in Washington for New York. That said his stepfather had told him that he had served in the war with Bill Clinton's father and liked him very much. He did ask for the old vet's phone number, the father's phone number that knew his dad, and the man said he didn't have it but would get it to him. He's still waiting. Basically anything or anyone that knew anything of his dad, he wanted to be in contact with, which is understandable. And he says that at the end of his presidency, he picked a few places to say goodbye and thanks to the American people. Chicago was one of the places. That's where Hillary was born. Okay. And he won the Democratic nomination on St. Patrick's Day in 1992. And it was where many of his most ardent supporters lived, and many of his most important domestic initiatives in crime, welfare, and education were proved effective. This is what he says, where his parents went to live after the war. His last event was in the Palmer House Hotel. That was the last place that that is the scene of the only photo that he had of his parents together. That was taken just before his mother came back to Hope, the city that he was born in 1946. Excerpts from chapter 2. He talked about being in New Orleans and loving Aaron and Charmaine Neville, Al Hurt. And he had a chance to eat at great restaurants with John Bro, Sheriff Harry Lee. And those were some of the first memories that he had of his mom. And then he states that for all their own demons, his grandparents and his mother always made him feel he was the most important person in the world to them. And he states most children will make it if they have just one person who makes them feel that way, and he had 3. And that is so important. We have to have someone that loves us. He talked about his mama, which is his grandma. His mama's main goals for him were that he would eat a lot, learn a lot, and always be neat and clean. They always ate at the kitchen table next to the window. And his high chair always faced the window, and his grandma, tacked playing cards up on the wooden window frame at mealtime so that he could learn to count. He talked about his grandfather, James Eldridge Cassidy, who he says looked a lot like Randolph Scott. I don't know who that is. Also, he talked about how Easter in the 1950s, he wore a light-colored short-sleeved shirt, white linen pants, pink and black hush puppies, matching pink suede belt, and how when he was living with his grandfather, his granddad had 2 jobs that he really loved. He ran a little grocery store and supplemented his income by working as a night watchman at a sawmill. And he said he loved spending the night with Papa, which is his grandpa, at the sawmill. They would take paper bags with sandwiches for supper. And he would sleep in the back seat of the car. And on clear starlit nights, he would take in the magical smells of fresh cut timber and sawdust. And his grandfather loved working there too. It reminded his granddad of when he worked at the mill as a young man around the time that his mom was born. So this is a really cool book. I really liked it. You learn a lot about Bill Clinton's heart and how much, like I said, that preface rang true in his life where it says his grandfather taught him to look up to people others look down on because we're not so different after all. Anyways, love you with the love of Christ. Bless.